Hi, my name is Shelly, and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl and Her Healing podcast. If this is your first time stopping by, thank you. I appreciate you. If you have been here before over and over again, thank you for your continued support. It means so much to me. My loves, before we start this episode, and you already see the title, Finding Yourself in the Deep End of Healing, I want to be honest with you about where I am right now. Not the healed version, not that I've made it to the other side version, but the real version. I'm in it. I'm in the deep end of my healing as I'm recording this. And I didn't want to wait until I was fully healed to speak on this, because the truth is, we're never fully healed. We are always growing and evolving, so we're always healing. I want to speak while I'm in it, so you know this is what it actually looks like. Some days feel clear, some days feel extremely heavy. Some moments I feel strong and grounded, and other moments I feel like I'm unraveling in ways I didn't expect. And I think that's important to say out loud, because a lot of the time we hear people talk about healing from a place of distance, from a place where everything already makes sense. But right now, I'm still feeling it. I'm still processing it. I'm still sitting with the parts of myself that are tender, that are raw, and that are learning how to be seen. So if my voice feels a little softer, if there are pauses, if you feel the emotion behind my words, it's because this isn't just something I'm talking about. It's something I'm living. And maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you didn't need perfection. Maybe you needed honesty. You're not here by accident. There's a reason this moment found you. Because the deep end of healing is a place that not many people understand unless they've been there themselves. It's the part of healing where things feel heavy, where old wounds start surfacing, where you begin seeing your life, your childhood, your relationships differently. And sometimes that realization can feel overwhelming. You might feel like you're losing parts of yourself, like the version of you that once made life feel predictable is slowly falling away. And that can feel scary, because when you start healing deeply, you can't go back to what you once tolerated. You start feeling more, seeing more, understanding more, and for a while, it can feel lonely. So if you clicked on this video while you're in that space, while you're questioning things, while emotions are rising, while you're trying to make sense of your journey, I want you to stay and listen to this episode for real. Not because I have all the answers, because I don't, but because I understand what it feels like to be in the deep end of healing, and to wonder if what you're feeling is normal. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the raw parts of healing that people don't always talk about. The moments when your identity starts shifting, the moments when you realize how much you've been carrying, the moments when you start meeting the real you underneath survival mode. And more importantly, how you don't lose yourself in the deep end. You find it, my love. So if your heart feels a little heavy today, if your mind won't quiet down, or if you're just tired of holding things in, If you've been doing the inner work, if you've been trying to understand your past so you can finally move forward, this episode is for you. My loves, let me make this absolutely clear. You are safe here. You're not crazy for feeling the way you feel. And you're not alone in this process. Absolutely not. So take a breath with me. And stay for this conversation. Let's talk about what it really means to find yourself in the deep end of healing. Let me ask you this. What happens when healing doesn't feel good? What happens when it doesn't feel like soft mornings, journaling, or peace, but instead feels like grief, confusion, anger, and breaking open in ways you didn't expect it? Because that's the part people don't talk about. They talk about healing like it's this beautiful glow up. Like you just wake up one day and suddenly love yourself. But what they don't tell you is before you find yourself, you have to meet every version of you that you had to become just to survive. And that's where the deep end begins. The deep end is where distractions stop working, where you can't run from yourself anymore, where silence gets loud, where your body starts remembering things your mind tried so hard to forget. The deep end is where truth lives. I've been in that space. Not the curated version of healing, not the I'm okay now version. Okay, but the kind where you have to sit with yourself and realize, wow, I've been carrying pain that was never mine to carry. The kind where you look back at your childhood and instead of brushing it off, you actually feel it. And that feeling, it's heavy. Growing up, there were things I didn't fully understand at the time. There were gaps, there were emotional distances. There were pieces of my story that didn't make sense until I got older. And when you're a child, you don't process pain the same way adults do, right? You internalize it. You make it mean something about you. And you start believing things like, I'm not enough, or I'm too much. I have to earn love, or I have to shrink myself to be accepted. And the crazy part is that you don't even realize that you're building your identity around survival. Okay, so you grow up and you become who you needed to be to make it through. So you needed to be strong, independent, guarded, resilient. But underneath all of that, there's a version of you that never got held. And healing, real healing, is when you finally turn around and face her. The deep end is not about fixing yourself. It's truly about meeting yourself fully, honestly, without running. There's a moment in healing where everything starts to unravel. So the things you once tolerated, you can't anymore. The people you once felt comfortable around, they start to feel misaligned. The version of you that kept you safe, it just no longer fits. And it's confusing. Absolutely it is, because you're not who you used to be, but you're not fully who you're becoming yet. You're pretty much in the in-between. And that is the in-between space. That's the deep end. And that's where it's uncomfortable. It's lonely at times. It can feel like you're losing everything when really you're shedding everything that was never truly you. And I know how scary that feels. Because when you've spent your whole life adapting, learning to survive, learning how to read the room, learning how to not be too much, letting go of that version of you can feel like you're losing your identity. But here's the truth. You're not losing yourself. You're finding yourself for the very first time. And when you're finding yourself in the deep end, it will ask you questions like, who are you when you're not performing? Who are you when you're not trying to be loved? Who are you when you stop abandoning yourself? And those questions, they don't have quick answers, because finding yourself is not a one-time realization, okay? It's a process that comes in layers. It's unlearning and relearning over and over and over again. If I'm being honest, there were moments in my healing where I had to sit with the truth that broke me. Truth like I was pouring into people who couldn't pour back into me. I was accepting bare minimum because it felt familiar. I was choosing people who reflected wounds I hadn't healed yet. And again, that realization, it didn't feel empowering at first. Okay, it felt painful, because once you see it, it's impossible to unsee it. And then you have a choice. You have to make that choice. Okay, either you stay where it's familiar or choose yourself, even if it means walking alone for a while. And let me be honest with you. Choosing yourself is not always the easier path. It requires boundaries. It requires letting go. It requires sitting with loneliness instead of filling the void with what's convenient. But it also requires something deeper. It requires you to hold yourself. And I don't mean like hold yourself on a surface level way. I mean truly holding yourself. Holding yourself in your breakdowns, right? In your triggers, in your moments of doubt. And this time, not running, not numbing, not distracting, but staying. That's what the deep end teaches you. It teaches you how to stay with yourself. And when I tell you, there were moments I wanted to escape it. I wanted to go back to what was comfortable, to ignore whatever it is that I was feeling. But something inside me, something deeper, it kept saying, stay here. There's something here for you. And that something, I now realize, was me. The version of me that I had abandoned for years. The version of me that needed love, not perfection. The version of me that needed safety, not survival mode. And slowly, very slowly, I started showing up for her. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Healing is not about becoming someone new. That is a misconception. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Plain and simple. That remembering, it doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the deep end. In the moments where you're crying and you don't fully understand why. Okay, it will happen in the moments where you feel everything at once. In the moments where you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. That's where the shift happens. It doesn't happen overnight, but in small, quiet ways. You start choosing differently. You start speaking up. You start walking away from things that once felt impossible to leave. And one day you look back and realize you didn't drown in the deep end. You learned how to swim. You learned how to swim, and not just swim, but float. You did that. You learned how to trust yourself, how to hold yourself, to be with yourself without needing to escape. That's the kind of healing that changes everything. So, my love, if you're in the deep end right now, if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel like everything is shifting, if you feel like you're losing parts of yourself, I need you to hear this. You're not breaking, okay? You're becoming, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it's messy, yes, even when it hurts, especially then. I want you to give yourself permission to feel it, to grieve what you didn't have, to honor what you went through, and to release what you were never meant to carry. And most importantly, to stay. Stay with yourself. Stay through the discomfort. Stay through the uncertainty. And most of all, stay through the healing, because on the other side of that, there's a version of you that is whole. Not because life was perfect, but because you chose to face it. And that is powerful. Let me go a little deeper, because there's another layer to this I feel doesn't get talked about enough. And that's the part where healing starts to change how you see love. Not just romantic love, but love in every form. The way you give it, the way you receive it, the way you've been chasing it without even realizing. You know, there comes a point in the deep end where you start recognizing patterns that once felt normal. And it hits you that some of the ways you learned to love were rooted in survival, not in safety. You know, maybe love for you looked like inconsistency. Maybe it looked like having to prove yourself, or being the strong one, or being the understanding one even when it hurt. Maybe you learned that love meant staying even when you were slowly losing yourself. And when you start healing, those patterns doesn't feel the same anymore. What once felt familiar starts to feel uncomfortable. What once felt exciting starts to feel draining. And that shift, it can feel so confusing, because part of you still recognizes the old patterns as home, even if they were never healthy for you. And unfortunately, that's the push and pull of healing. One part of you is evolving, right? While another part is still holding on to what it knows. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. Not because they don't want to heal, but letting go of what's familiar can feel like grieving something that once felt like love. And that grief, it's real, and it deserves to be acknowledged. You got to realize that you're not just letting go of people. You're letting go of versions of yourself that existed within those connections. The version of you that tolerated more than you should have. The version of you that stayed quiet. The version of you that overgave, hoping it would finally be enough. And as painful as it is to see that clearly, there is obviously power in it, because once you become aware, you start choosing differently. Even if it feels uncomfortable at first, you start pausing before you overextend yourself. You start noticing when something feels off. You start honoring the feelings instead of dismissing them. And those small shifts, they matter more than you think. Because you have to keep in mind that healing isn't always loud. It's not always these big dramatic moments. Sometimes healing is quiet. Sometimes it looks like you choosing not to respond the way you used to. You know how you used to crash out? Or you start walking away from something that would once pull you in. Or you're simply sitting with yourself more instead of reaching for a distraction. And that, my love, that's growth, okay? Even if no one else sees it. Let me say this. There may be people who don't understand this version of you. People who were comfortable with the old you, the one who didn't have boundaries, the one who made things easier for them. And when you start changing, they might not know how to meet you where you are. And that can hurt because it can feel like you're being misunderstood or even rejected. But what's really happening is you're no longer abandoning yourself to maintain those connections. And that changes everything in itself. You start valuing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, depth over surface level connections. And yes, that might mean your circle gets smaller. And that's okay, because it also becomes more aligned, more real, more intentional. And in that space, you begin to experience a different kind of love. The kind that doesn't require you to prove your worth. The kind that doesn't feel like a constant emotional roller coaster. The kind that feels safe, it feels steady and mutual. But honestly, before you can fully receive that externally, you have to learn how to create it internally. And that's another thing the deep end teaches you, how to become a safe space for yourself. Not just when things are going well, but especially when they're not. Especially in the moments when you're triggered or when old wounds resurface, when you feel the urge to go back to what's familiar. Instead of judging yourself, you start getting curious. Questions start arising like, why does this feel so intense right now? What is this moment reminding me of? What part of me needs attention? And my love, that shift from judgment to curiosity, it's truly where healing deepens, because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're simply understanding yourself. And the more you do that, the more compassion you develop for your journey. You start realizing you were never too much. You were just holding too much without support. You were never hard to love. You just hadn't experienced the kind of love that meets you where you are. And again, that realization, it softens something inside of you. It allows you to release shame. It allows you to stop blaming yourself for the things that were shaped in environments you didn't choose. And that is truly important, because healing is not about blaming others. But it's also not about blaming yourself. It's truly about seeing clearly, feeling honestly, and choosing differently moving forward. There's also something that happens in the deep end. You start reconnecting with parts of yourself that might have got lost along the way, like your voice, your intuition, your desires. Things you may have ignored for years because survival required you to focus on everything else. And as you reconnect, you might notice something beautiful. You start trusting yourself again. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're finally listening. And that trust, that very trust becomes your foundation. So even when things feels uncertain, even when life doesn't look exactly how you imagined, you know you can rely on yourself to navigate it. And that's powerful because at the end of the day, the deep end of healing is not just about processing pain. It's about transformation. It's about shedding layers that were never truly you and stepping into a version of yourself that feels more aligned, more grounded, and whole. Not perfect, but real. And if you're still in the middle of it, my love, still feeling your way through the waves, still learning how to stay afloat, I want you to hear this, okay? Every moment you choose awareness, every moment you choose yourself, every moment you choose to stay instead of running, you are moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. There is nothing, and when I say nothing, I mean absolutely nothing wasted in this process. Not the tears, not the confusion, and definitely not the time it takes, because it's all shaping you. It's strengthening you, returning you to yourself. And one day, you're going to look back at this version of you, the one who kept going even when it was hard, the one who chose to feel instead of numb, the one who stepped into the deep end without fully knowing how to swim. And you're going to feel so proud because that version of you is the reason you found your way back home to yourself. My loves, before we close, I want to leave this with you. And I want you to open up your heart space and receive this message. You don't have to rush your healing. Okay? You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be fully healed to be worthy of love, especially your own. Take it one moment at a time. Okay? One breath at a time, one choice at a time. And if all you did today was stay, that's enough. My loves, thank you for being here with me and holding space for me as I hold space for you. Thank you for allowing yourself to feel, and thank you for choosing you. Until next time, keep going. Even in the deep end, you got this. I love you so much, and I will catch you on the next episode.